So I watched the film. Congratulations on the film, by the way. Trigger
Thank you,
warning.
man.
I watched it yesterday. There's a real kind of, in some respects, kind of a throwback to some of the action films that I used to love when I was growing up because it's got thrills, it's got spills. People aren't exactly who you think they are, so there's always intrigue and there's always suspense and all that kind of stuff. But
Right.
also, the action is so well done. Like Jessica, you guys, the stunt community that you had on this. I mean, everyone goes full throttle for this. When you were first pitched it, what was the pitch, kind of the elevator pitch to you, not just in the story, but also the character that you play?
Well, I have great representatives. I have a team at a company called Untitled Management, and Jason Weinberg, who I've known for many years, is the owner of the company, and another gentleman named Mitch Mason are my guys. And so they set that up, and I had an opportunity to speak with the director, this filmmaker Molly Soria, and I found her to be just lovely, man. She was really a very kind and warm, and she had grown up watching a lot of my films, and so she was really cool, man. And she kind of just wanted, we had a really nice discussion. I didn't have to screen test or anything. It was really a lovely meeting we had. So it kind of developed from there. And I was very happy for it. In terms of the action piece you mentioned, yeah, I mean, look, I love the John Wick series, man. They're really great films. And so Thunder Road is a solid company. Basil and Erica and Esther, who run it, are really top notch. On this particular project, which I'm sure you know, Scott, we had a team of women that were phenomenal. So Jessica was one of the EPs, Erica, Esther. We also had Zoe White, who was a female cinematographer, and she was amazing. And that's one of the dynamics I study when I get on the set. I often look at the director and the cinematographer to see how they vibe and how they're attacking the day and how they design the shoots, and the shots. Um, so to the action, yeah, I mean, we had the 8711, and I'm sure you're aware of them. They're just top notch. Growing up, I've had a long career. It's been 48 years in counting here. But I've worked with certain stunt organizations like Stuntmen's Association, Stunts Unlimited. There's a lot of great stunt people I've had the pleasure of working with. But I got to say, this company was like top notch, man. Because when we got to Santa Fe, Scott, like they had a whole core there of stunt people, coordinators, assistant coordinators. They had pre-visualized a lot of the sequences, which was amazing. So they are really great to work with. So I was really pumped about that aspect of the film, and attacking it from, we're making a real action film here. And I was highly impressed with Jessica. I mean, she's very serious about it. She loves doing action. She's a good actress, and she's really good with her action stuff. Like having done those Robert Rodriguez films, Dust Till Dawn and other things like Dark Angel. So she had a real background with that. So I was really impressed by her attention to detail with the fight sequences and doing all that. And it was just a lot of fun. A lot of what makes it a great experience to be able to work in film or TV is the adventure of it, Scott. A lot of people, I feel like, don't discuss that. So here again was a great opportunity. I went to New Mexico. I'd never been to Santa Fe. It was a really cool artsy community and very multicultural and really interesting. And then I often just get like a car, my deal. So I would drive myself to set, and we'd be out in these far-reaching desert locations, and that time is valuable too. You go to work and you're kind of getting in your head and listening to music and kind of getting ready for the day. So, yeah, it was fun to be a part of a real action film like this, especially with the work that Thunder Road has done, because I knew that the level of it was going to be really, high level in terms of what they were going to execute, and they did. So it's great.
Yeah, I have to say, in a job I had last year, I had the pleasure of being in a room for 2 days with Basil and Erica. So,
Oh, great,
so I
great,
had a few little conversations with them while I was working on a junket with the John Wick Continental junket thing. That's a
great,
completely other job,
great.
but they're both wonderful. But you can see how
Yeah,
popular and busy Basil is because he just had to have his phone in his hand the whole time.
yeah,
He's just so
yeah.
busy.
He's the
So
boss, right? He's running his
yeah,
company
he's the
now, but they
boss.
were a
Yeah,
pleasure.
yeah.
I didn't get to meet Basil on set, but great company. I mean, they're really doing some good work. And those ladies, Esther and Erica, were top notch. They were great producers. So it was really cool to see this core group of women really leading the charge in concert with the 8711 helping us out, and just a really great production. And having worked for the streamers, it's an honor to work with Netflix again. I did War Machine with them, that I started with Brad Pitt, and we had a great cast on that, and that goes back a couple of years and or more. And now working with Amazon. But I have to say, with these streamers, they give you great resources, but they also give people autonomy, filmmakers and TV creators, to do their thing. So I really respect that, and it's a pleasure to be working for them again. Yeah.
I know a lot of actors say that playing the bad guys is always better than playing the good guys because the bad guys get to have kind of all the fun. So I wondered what the lure of Ezekiel was for this one because I don't want to give anything away to anybody, but when you first meet him, you meet him, and then obviously the film progresses and the story happens, everything else. So, was he someone that you hadn't played before? Was he someone that kind of ticked some boxes that you hadn't done before? And also, there's a lot of intrigue in the fact that I guess when you were reading it for the first time, you weren't quite sure where it's going to go anyway.
Well, you're nailing it, and you kind of never do with a film. That's one of the things I do when I first meet with a filmmaker. I did this when I did Halloween Kills with David Gordon Green. You really want to get a sense and ask good questions like, what is their vision? What are they trying to achieve? And so that was wonderful with Molly. She was very communicative and very open about that. For this role, yeah, it was something that I hadn't done. I have played villains and bad guys before. It is true what you said. I think you can kind of pull out all the stops and kind of really just dig in, and I really enjoyed that aspect of it. And I think it's also great too when you play a villain, you want to inject some humor and bring some brevity to the character as well. So with this, sometimes it's informed too by like the other departments. We had a great costume department and their vision board. Our costume designer was showing me like pictures of Ted Turner from the 80s, these guys that are sort of like living in the Southwest of the US. But the other thing I wanted to do, like, so his look and a lot of that was informed by some of the vision of the costume designer. So the clothes helped. I chose to give him a little bit of a Southern snarl to kind of make him sort of nondescriptly from the South. Um, and then there's the dynamic with the other actors, which is always the most important thing. And I feel like with Jesse and Elvis, played by Mark Webber and Jake Weary, excellent actors, really talented guys. We had a really good group of actors in this film. It was also kind of funny too, Scott, to be honest. Like it's the first movie I'd made where I get on the set and I have like two grown ass men playing my son. I'm like, wait a minute, I guess I'm in my late 50s now. Can't avoid it, man. I started out as a kid in puberty, and now here I am.
Yeah.
So that was fun too, man. To have a laugh, and I enjoyed. Mark is a really bright guy. He's a filmmaker as well. His wife is an excellent actress. They make films together. They're kind of a Cassavetes team and Jenna Rollins in a way. So I have a lot of respect for him. I didn't know Jake before this, but he's really good in the film. He jumps off the screen. He's my Kane. And I think that Jesse's more of the Abel. So those dynamics are all really fun and interesting to play. And then couple that with working with someone like Jessica, who's a star. She's great. She's got a lot of presence, but very serious minded too. Very important to her that the execution of things was right on time. And so she was cool to work with. And then obviously, always the crew. We had another great crew to work with. So it was a fun experience, man. Yeah.
Was there anyone, given that he's a senator, was there any real life kind of politicians or senators that you maybe drew a few nuggets from? Obviously, I know you get the costume and
No.
everything else, but I wondered whether you put
Yeah.
anything into it that
No.
way.
No, and I'm kind of apolitical myself. So I mean, I think that we've seen enough of that. So I think it was more like drawing from the subconscious of, we've seen, depending on party and preference and all that other stuff what politics could be. I think it's kind of seeped into people's awareness, obviously. So yeah, no, I didn't, it's a good question, but I didn't really base it on anyone else. As I said, other than the kind of look and feel of like Ted Turner in the early 80s, this kind of rich, guy that would, let's say, live in the Southwest of America, that kind of thing. So that was helpful.
Must be fun to wear the hat as well. I always feel like there's people
Oh
that can
yeah,
pull the hat off and people that can't pull the hat off.
but that's what I'm saying. Like those kind of things are really helpful. That scene, it's so funny that that particular scene where we're talking about, uh, you know, Jessica and I have that scene in my house in the film, and it's so funny because on the day we did it, it was like late in the evening or early morning hours, so everyone's a little bit tired. And I remember thinking, just playing the scene straight, and I didn't remember thinking it was really that particularly funny. But when we watched it the other night at the screening, my wife and I we were cracking up, because the scene starts off with him saying something really stupid and self-demeaning, like I'm not a racist person. I'm like the only person who's not racist in my town or something that clearly denotes the opposite that he is. That he is a bit of uh, a racist, unfortunately. So he kind of rubs up against Jessica's character, and she's great. She's the female hero, and I think that there are aspects of this film that remind me of Molly's first film that got her nominated, which was Marlene and the Murderer in Four Acts. She did a beautiful job with that film, and it was nominated, as you probably know, Scott. And so she's a really talented filmmaker. I was really impressed by her notes, by the accuracy of her notes and her adjustments and things that she would come up with. And then also, like I said, seeing that relationship on set with her and Zoe White, how they worked in tandem, and it was an excellent cinematographer. So these ladies are really on top of it. And then again, you use your strengths. They had the 8711, the men and women from the stunt team who were right there to support us. And then a good group of actors. And, it's really fun, man. It's the world of make believe, and I never want to forget that. And I often remind myself, when you get too serious or you get too heady, look at what you're doing for a living. It's a real gift to be able to make movies and TV. So it's never lost on me, man. And I think as I get older, I want to work with that appreciation even more, because sometimes you can get a little set in your ways or you get a little bit jaded in some ways over the course of any career. So I think it really reinvigorated a lot of things that I love about making movies for me. So it was great.
Yeah. In the last almost 2 decades, my day job has been working in a record shop, but a record shop that sold movies. So that's obviously my
Brilliant.
passion in life. And it's
Yeah.
interesting to talk to you because the amount of times I've had young generations coming in to buy or seek out your older movies, Weird Science,
Oh,
as Club on 16 Candles. And now with the combination of streaming and Blu-ray re-releases and all this kind of stuff, that generations now are discovering what we used to love in the 80s. And I was just
yeah.
wondering for you, has that I can imagine it doesn't get old, but it must be such a joy that these films have kind of transcended time. And even though generations now are very much into their phones and streaming and doing different things, that they're still seeking out
Yeah.
these films that for their parents was quite defining in many ways.
Yes, sir. No, listen, I appreciate that. That was very sweet what you said, man. Thanks for that. This is something that I've discovered in the decades since I made those films. I started out when I was 8 years old, way back in 1976. I did a play with Steve Allen. And so 5 or 6 years before I started even auditioning for commercials and getting those films that I did with John Hughes, I've been at this such a long time. So I'm just grateful. I really am. I work with that sense of gratitude, and I'm thankful for that. And I've seen that in the last 3 decades. I've had a lot of time to think about those early films that John put me in, and I'm blessed to be a part of. And they really do continue to find younger audiences. And I think that I have a good sense of as to why, because there was a certain paradigm that he worked within, Scott, which was like everybody winds up a little bit better off than they started out. And you see these little wins, these little emotional victories or relational victories with the characters. And not to get too heady about it, but that was a real paradigm for Hughes that everybody was fair play, everybody could be vulnerable, everybody could feel like an awkward, goofy kid that we felt like growing up. And at the same time, there is an arc there. There is a place that we can get to where they'll be a little bit better off. You see it in something like The Breakfast Club, which is a little more serious, but even in Weird Science or 16 Candles, it's sort of like, is it epilogue at the end? You call it epilogue or prologue? Yeah, epilogue. To the characters. Yeah. And it's interesting in the comedies that I loved as a kid, like Animal House, right? Had that, right? Or the Ivan Reitman films, Meatballs or Stripes, or. So I really want to tip my hat to not only John Hughes, but Matty Simmons, who created National Lampoon, and the late, great Harold Ramis, who put me in Vacation. Had I not stood on the shoulders of those giants, Scott, I wouldn't be where I am today. And that they saw something in me. We all need a break, and everybody needs to be helped and nurtured. And I was just a little kid, man. I was a wee lad, and to look back and know that I was a part of these things and that they have found an audience and they continue to find younger audiences is really a blessing, man. It's really
Yeah,
something
and a
I'm
few of them
grateful
have
for.
around anniversaries this year, next year. It's kind of around that circle, isn't it?
Dude,
Where
I can't
your
believe I have
decades. So
movies that are like 40 years old and older. My God. I feel like George Burns. What was that old George Burns joke when he was doing stand up into his 90s? He's like, it's good to be here. It's good to be anywhere at my age. It's good to be
yeah,
seen. But here I am at 56, man, and I've had a long career. So I just thank God that I've had these opportunities and that I guess I had at least enough intelligence to keep at it. That was a saying in my household growing up. My father, who's no longer with us, he passed about 6 years ago. He was really great, and he always said, stay accessible, just keep chipping away. And I always think of my father's advice. So it's a real blessing to be a part of this industry and to have worked for such a long period of time. And it's really not lost on me. It's something I work with that sense of gratitude. And I think that opens you up to new energy and to being and doing your best. So that's something I try to do. Yeah.
yeah. Just quickly before I let you go, I did want to ask you. You've been obviously in many, many movies. One of my favorite movies and one of my favorite things in the world is Batman, and you're obviously in the biggest of the Batmans, which is The Dark Knight. And I was obviously that had such a when you did obviously Mike Engel and Gotham Tonight and all that kind of stuff, but you were in arguably the big scene of that film, which is the big funeral scene.
Mm.
Hundreds of extras, in I think it was Chicago or somewhere like that, where
Yes.
there was you. I think on those days Heath was on the set, Gary Oldman was on the set, Aaron Eckhart, Maggie Gyllenhaal, and ironically, I think Christian Bale was the only one not on the set because he was kind of investigating something over here.
You're nailing it. No, you're nailing it. That's exactly how it played out. Christian was not there. Everybody else you mentioned was there, and there were like 1,000 retired Chicago PD cops as extras.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right there.
And there was David Dalmatian as well, who's been in Late Night with the Devil and gone on to have an
Excellent
amazing career
actor.
as well.
Yeah,
What was it like to be on
yeah.
that set on for those particular days? Because for me, it kind of sums up Christopher Nolan's Batman movies in the sense of there's such a real world to it. It's about people and about
Yeah.
that scene's about loss and the anarchy
Yeah.
that's about to come and all that kind of stuff, and really resonates in the modern world. What was it like to spend those couple of days on that set? 'Cause there's so many people and so much going on.
Right. Well, first, let me just give you credit. Your description was great. It brought me back to that. It was an incredible day. Like I remember those days
Seen it a few
shooting.
times. I've seen it a few
Yes,
times.
sir. Yeah, you and me both. Excuse me. But one of the things that Nolan does, because he's just absolutely brilliant, as we know. I mean, I remember between takes when we'd go on to another shot, he was like the Pied Piper because he would be setting up the next shot with multiple cameras. I mean, it's very normal for him to set up 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 cameras on that particular sequence. And in the course of those days when we shot it, same thing was at play. There were cameras deployed on the ground. There were cameras in the buildings. He's just an amazing guy to work with. And I remember the Pied Piper thing applies because his assistant and the camera department, everybody would be following him, and he's such a brilliant filmmaker technically that we all know now. I mean, that's the case. I mean, from Memento all the way up to Oppenheimer, he's just an amazing filmmaker. I just remember being thrilled. Honestly, I was so excited. I was always a huge Gary Oldman fan. He's one of the greatest actors alive, in my opinion, without question, right? I liked Aaron Eckhart a lot. Very nice guy. And I have to say this about Christian Bale and Heath. God rest his soul. He was brilliant, man. He was really something else. He was something to watch. I remember doing my own research on this. It might have even been after the fact when we made the film. And I remember something that Nolan said to me on the day. I have two quick stories. I asked him about the hiring of Christian, and he said Christian was the first guy that I met with, and he just felt it. He felt it. And Christian is a brilliant actor and has been, he's had a very long career. Like myself, he started out as a little boy, but I have a great respect for him and his choices and the kind of guy that he is. And also, I think the way in which he can kind of separate his work life and his family life. He's a really admirable guy. I love Christian Bale. But Heath was something else to watch, man. I mean, I remember the thing that I had read about Nolan and his meetings with Heath is that they had discussed two things, believe it or not, the Sex Pistols and Clockwork Orange. So there's that shot when he's in the cell and he's kind of sitting like this with the eyes looking up. I mean, that was very Clockwork inspired. I'm sure Kubrick, as a fellow Brit, was someone that, and I know this to be true, that Nolan loves and admires. So I think it was a sort of a hybrid of, he wanted the anarchy of a Johnny Rotten and the Sex Pistols in their heyday of the 70s. And I also feel that there were elements of Clockwork and the sort of, let's say, the attempted reformation of Malcolm McDowell's character in that film. Very different arc for Heath as the Joker, but man, wasn't he brilliant in the film, right? All the little ticks that he has, and you know, I mean, he was just phenomenal in the film. And I remember there's a funny little story I'll tell you. One day we were shooting at Cardington. I don't even know if it's still open. Is it still there, Cardington, the Air Force Base where they have the stages? It's
In
outside of
London.
London.
That's how
Yeah,
London. Yeah,
so
I think Christopher Nolan uses it probably a lot more than anybody else. I would suggest for
got it.
some stuff.
Got
Yeah,
it. So they had built, I mean, as you know, the scale of that place is amazing. It's like the
yeah,
size of four stages in Hollywood put
yeah.
together.
It's
So you
huge.
go in
Yeah,
there and it's like 10 stories. So they had built the inner, the high rise where the climax happens with their fight over the coming out of the window and the whole thing. So we were waiting. We were at Cardington, and we got there in the morning. And I remember just seeing rows of trucks, and it was just again another one of these projects where there's a couple hundred people on the set, a big crew. And I was just getting impatient, like kind of waiting around all day, getting frustrated. And I happen to come out of my trailer, and I see Heath coming out of his trailer, and it was just a really funny moment where I was just frustrated as an actor and being a pain in the ass. And I was like, when the hell are we going to shoot this scene? And Heath kind of mocked me in that moment. We didn't really have a conversation. He looked at me what I had to say as he was passing me. And he's like, I can't work like this. And really what he was doing was kind of mocking me, like, just relax, like, just enjoy this because we're here, right? So as fate would have it, a couple hours later, the ADs came up to Heath and I, and they were like, okay, we're going to bring you over and go shoot this other sequence where he basically holds me hostage and hangs me upside down. But he said Chris wants Heath to direct it, so Heath is going to direct it with a camcorder. And so then we were off and running, and we wound up shooting that day that scene where I'm hung upside down. But it was a great little moment that I had with Heath, and I gave him plenty of space. You know, when you see an actor in a zone like that on a film, you just want to give him space and watch. You know, but it was a fun little moment between Heath and I because he was kind of clowning me in that moment, like, "Relax, man. You know, you're on a Batman movie, man. Just chill out and be here."
That's also nice
So,
to hear because there was obviously a lot of talk that the role kind of consumed him. But I've heard people, Michael J. White, who was in the film, and a few other people saying it wasn't like, and Eric Roberts, I think, was like, it wasn't like that at all. When he was off, he was
yeah.
like so jovial and so lovely. And
Yeah, and he was cool. Like I would describe him as he was this cool kid, man, from Australia. He was a surfer. He felt like a skater or a guy in a band. He was
yeah,
just very cool guy, man. He really was. He had a lot of charisma. He was absolutely a great actor. He really was. And I think everybody knows that now. And obviously he won posthumously. And shout out to his family because that was a horrible loss. You know, he really would have continued to emerge. And I think in great performances because he was just wonderful. Yeah. But he also I remember reading years ago in a book called Directors on Directing, and it was one of the interviews. It was actually with Peter Bogdanovich, and they asked him, "What is the first thing you notice in an actor?" And he quite deftly responded, "His or her intelligence." You know, so I think when you see a great actor, a great movie star, like he's had that thing, man. He was a really smart guy, and his performances showed that. You know, and from a young age too. I really I think we would have seen a lot more great work from Heath, and I'm sorry for his loss. You know.
yeah, absolutely. One final quick thing before you go, because I've got to let you go. If you get a call from Dan Harmon about being in a Community movie from your wonderful Community cameos that you had back in the day, Is
Thank
it
you.
is it is it an automatic yes? Because I love some of your cameos are so. You got the mustache going and paintball,
Oh,
all that kind of stuff.
man,
If they called you
Scott,
up to do it, are you
dude,
there for it, Jay?
your finger is on the pulse because in a second I would. So thank you. From your lips to Dan Harmon's ears, I would do it in a second. I did an event about a year and a half ago with Joel McHale, who I love. I'm a big fan of Joel's. And he told me, he said, "Yeah, we have something in there for you." I hope to be a part of it. I don't know if they're going to make it happen or if is it happening? Do you know, Scott? Or
As far
are
as
they
I'm
making
aware,
that?
it's happening. I think from what I've
I
read,
love it.
I'm not on the pulse in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
But from what I've read, Donald Glover's obviously a busy man with his other
Yeah.
stuff. So I
Well, let
think
me just
it's
say one
now
thing
that
about that. Yeah.
they kind of have to nail down a lot of people because they've all become
Right.
kind of
They've
successful,
all
haven't they? Now I
become
guess
bigger
it's
deals in the
schedules and
business.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to say one thing about the camaraderie I felt like when I did that show. Obviously, like Joel, he made a couple of jokes about Chevy because I guess Chevy didn't have a great work experience and it led to him leaving the show. And I don't want to speak to that as much as I want to say the camaraderie amongst that crew, all the ladies on that show, Gillian, Donald. I mean, these people, they couldn't have been nicer. They were really wonderful. They were great to work with. They were very supportive. It almost felt like I was a part of a play because it had that kind of theater kids vibe to it because they were also committed to it and really enjoyed the shooting of that show. That was one of the shows I did along with Psych, where the writing was so funny, man. You'd almost have to like jog to keep up with it because the writing was so sharp. So I love that. And yes, to your point, I would do it in a second, man. I love that. And when I got to the set, I couldn't believe it. They gave me the fake mustache with the gloves, right? And I'm wearing my shorts outside my sweatpants. I'm like, "Are you guys serious?" They're like, "Yep." I go, "This is perfect. You just cut me loose." And to this day, one of my favorite lines, I think in any comedy I've done, Scott, is, "How about my fist up your balls?" I mean, when I said that to Joel McHale, I was like, I almost pissed myself, I think.
I
So there
still
were some
maintain
great,
that's a yeah. I still
oh,
maintain that's a show was so ahead of its time. Like that's
I
why it
couldn't
wasn't
agree
like
more.
huge show.
Yeah.
It's like so ahead of its time. Whereas now I watch it and I'm just like it's just genius on every single level.
Isn't it, man? It really is. And again, the writing and the performance and all those comedic actors, just wonderful. But they were all so nice too. I just want to say that they were just so cool and welcoming, and I had a great time on that. And that was the Russo brothers before they blew up.
Before they did Avengers and stuff. Yeah, you can see
Yeah.
little
So
bits
the
of
Russo brothers,
Community
hire me
in the
again, will
Avengers
you?
films. It's funny. Yeah. Listen, I'll let you go. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thanks so much for your time. I've
Likewise, Scott.
enjoyed
I
chatting with
appreciate
you,
it.
and yeah, good luck with the movie, and hopefully we'll see you in the Community movie in a couple of years.
It would be great, man. If not, maybe we'll talk again when I promote Reacher next year. So anyway, great
Oh yes,
meeting you,
yes,
and thank you
please.
for
Good luck with Reacher. Yeah, I do love that show. So yeah, things
appreciate it.
circle
All
back.
right. Cheers.
Thanks so much for your time. Pleasure.
You
Thanks
as
so much.
well, sir.
Have a
Thanks
good
a
one.
lot.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys!
Hey, you guys!
Hey, you guys!
Hey, that's what they all say.
Hey, you guys!
Hey,